if I want to have any type of decent life, I better quit thinking about me all the time and try to develop a servant's heart.
Welcome to Intrinsically Motivated, where we're having conversations with experts in the field of addiction, recovery, and those who've been affected by it as we seek to mobilize the church to replace addiction and mental health challenges with flourishing. Today we're talking to Craig Forrester. He's the Program Director for Recovery Resources. We're going to be talking about the way addiction affected his life, his perspective on the reality of what addiction, recovery, and treatment look like in the world today, and how all of his experiences led to the creation of a growing recovery housing program for men. I'm Tanner Clements, and I'm the Media and Training Director for Uplift Appalachia. So we were just talking about this. So let's just start with Recovery Resources. Tell me a little bit about what Recovery Resources is and kind of how long you guys have been existing and what all you're trying to do with that.
So we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and I guess our specialty these days is recovery living in the Tri-Cities and surrounding regions. So we got 7 houses in Kingsport, 3 in Johnson City, 1 in Elizabethton, and hopefully adding 1 in Gate City, Virginia, whenever the city wants to quit fighting us. So we started as, we're as grassroots as it gets. Me and my buddy Roger Powell, we're just having a conversation one night in his living room about people not knowing how to access the services that are available to them. Like, I grew up in Kingsport. My mom's a school teacher. Like, I know everybody. Sold drugs here, all of that cool stuff. So, I know a ton of people, and I don't know all the services. And so we were like, we're going to, dreaming big. We're going to start a nonprofit and we're going to do all this stuff. And so then we realized that neither one of us are organized and we needed help. So we asked Tabitha Edwards to come on board. So that's the 3 co-founders. And we started, I guess that was 2018, with just a heart to do something for people in recovery from substance abuse disorder, I think is what they're calling it this month.
Right.
I call it drug addiction, but whatever the term the state uses this month. And so from there, we started doing life skills groups. We would buy $100 worth of pizza, open it up to the public, and do everything on how to budget your money, how to build your credit score up, mindfulness and spirituality. We did a college fair thing where we had all of Northeast State, Tennessee Tech, the barber schools, the cosmetology schools. I had this girl with a laptop doing FAFSA forms. And we did all that for free. And we did furniture donations where we would pick up the furniture and then we would give it away for free because, I'll get on my soapbox. Goodwill, they take the furniture and then they're like, I know you're poor and having to shop at a thrift store, but we're going to need $325 for this couch that's from 1973. And so we didn't want to do that. We just wanted to see a need, meet the need. And I feel like that earned us some goodwill in the community. Like, people saw that, hey, we're just people trying to help people. And so somebody took a chance on us in June of 21 and asked us if we wanted to do a sober living house. It was the middle of COVID, and I know a lot of people's experience was different with COVID, but we opened that first house in June of 21 and then opened another one in November of 21. And from there, it's just been seeing a need, meeting a need, seeing a need, meeting a need.
So how did you first get approached to do housing? When did you realize that was something that you could really help with, or that was the thing that you were most needed for?
So when we started, we had this giant list.
Right.
We're like, we want to do, we're going to conquer the world.
Absolutely.
And one of the main things, I guess we decided that the 3 areas of biggest need for people in recovery was housing, transportation, and employment. So right before COVID, we had written all these policies and procedures on how to do housing. And all of us have lived in, I've lived in 3 different sober living homes, ran by 3 different organizations. Rogers lived in some, Tabs lived in some. So it's we kind of built it, and then COVID happened and no one wanted to fool with us. And so in 2021, a guy we know, in recovery was like, hey, I've got some out of town investors that have got a house in Kingsport. Would y'all be interested in doing a house? Cause he'd heard us talk about it. We went and looked at it. It was perfect. It's still perfect. We put it's an 8-man house, and I was worried at the beginning that we weren't going to be able to fill it. And I realized very quickly that was that should never be the concern, because the state of affairs of like where we are with like the drug world, you're going to be able to fill the beds. And so we started trying to run the best housing program that we knew how, and we're super hands-on, and we can be a little overbearing at times, but I would much rather do that than, because there's some other places, man, they'll let you move in there, and if you're paying your rent and getting high and all the other terrible stuff, like as long as you're paying your rent, like they're cool. And we're not that. I said from the beginning that we're going to take care of our dudes, and if we need money, God's going to take care of the money. We just got to be good stewards of what we have, and so we've done that, and shit, we've done well.
Right. I want to come back a little in just a minute to a little bit more about your model for that. But you mentioned that you had been in recovery housing and all your co-founders have been in recovery housing. So tell me a little bit about what got you to the point in your life where obviously there's some background there, some history there. So tell me a little bit about why now you're so passionate about helping people in recovery.
Oh, man. So I guess I was like 11 or 12. And like, I don't come from a bad family. Like my mom's a school teacher. My dad worked over at ETSU. They're divorced, but like my brother's a Methodist minister. He went to Duke. He's never smoked weed. Like he's like a 2-beer kind of guy. So I every time I go back in my childhood, I want to be sure that like people know, like, dude, I didn't come from like a terrible background. Like I came from a good background, but I guess I was like 11 or 12, and the neighborhood kids, they were a little bit older than me. They were like, "Hey, you want to smoke some weed?" And yeah, like I don't know, like yeah, I do. And so I smoked weed for the first time then, and I loved it. Like absolutely loved it. I remember going home that night, making a pizza, eating it, and crashing out and going to sleep. But I remember laying there thinking, like, whatever this is, like, I've been missing out on it. And I don't know how often I'll get to do it, but every chance that comes in that I get, I'm going to take it. And so started smoking weed. And then it was like, you go to the stupid DARE programs and all of the anti-drug programs in school. And, and I've talked to my brother, my 2-beer brother, I've talked to him about this, and like those programs like scared him to where like he wouldn't do drugs. And like, I always thought like they were kind of like nonsense. And then once I realized, like once I started smoking weed and I was like, like I'm not living under a bridge, or, like it was kind of like y'all lied to me. And so from there, anytime somebody was like, "Hey, you want to try Xanaxes?" Yeah. You want to try mushrooms? Yeah. And so, by the age of, by the age of 17, I'd about done everything with the exception of, I don't think I'd done like heroin by then, but, and then I realized at an early age, like I'd buy a 20 sack of weed and I would roll 6 joints out of it. And I would sell 5 of them for $5 a piece. I'd make $5 and a free joint. So like in my mind, I'm like Pablo Escobar,
It was a business opportunity for you as much as anything.
It's just the cool lifestyle, like right. I make a little money, I party with my friends, I feel good. And so it was cool. So that, everything kind of snowballs, the drug dealing snowballs, the drug use snowballs. And I get to be about 19 and I'm just a punk kid that thinks I've got it figured out. So some of my boys that I grew up with, like they're my dudes. They're never going to do me wrong. They set me up with the drug task force. Dude wears a wire on me. I sell him some ecstasy pills. They didn't arrest me immediately. And so I was working at a record store in Kingsport, and I was coming home that night, and I had like, I don't know, a few $1,000s worth of weed and, a bunch of pills and stuff. And so they pull me over, search the car, find all that. And then they hit me with the indictment from the 2 times that they had me on tape selling drugs to their undercover guy. And so I'm like 19. My lawyer was like, you can either, like your options are the penitentiary, or you can do like outpatient services and AA meetings. And I was like, we're going to go with the outpatient services and the AA meetings. And so that was my first introduction to recovery. And that was probably like 2002, 2003. And I hated it, like just hated it. I was like, this is a bunch of cheese dick nonsense. And, they got their stupid little one-liners and none of it makes sense. And I'm a 19-year-old kid. And so like the thought of like never getting high again is like, that sounds terrible.
Your only motivation for being there was just to not have to go to jail.
I had to go to jail, but it was to keep me out of prison.
Keep you out of prison, right?
For a long time. So I went and I remember the outpatient group. Like I went to Bonnaroo the first year they had Bonnaroo. It was like '02, and I did every drug I could possibly get my hands on at Bonnaroo. But I came back and like I'd have my buddies like pee in this NyQuil cup for me, and I'd keep it in my pocket. And then when I'd go in there to the outpatient, they'd be like, "Take this drug test," and so I'd dump it in the drug test, and then passed. And they're like, "Oh, we're so proud of you." And I was like, and like I'm like, "Oh, it was really hard." And meanwhile, like I'm just a little punk kid getting high. And so that was my first introduction to recovery, and I hated it. And over the years, like on probation, and then I ended up having to go do my sentence, and I get out on parole, and then like I'd go to the stupid Suboxone clinics, and like, anytime somebody didn't know what to do with me, whether it be the probation officer, the parole officer, the doctor that's prescribing me the drugs that I'm not using correctly, or anybody, they would be like, you need to go to some meetings and stuff. And so like, I bounced in and out of the rooms of recovery all through my 20s. And I think the most time I ever got, actually, I don't think I know, the most time I ever got was 93 days. And it was probably the worst 93 days of my life. Like, hated it. I could just wanting to get high so bad I couldn't stand it. And then, so I go to prison, I make parole, I get out, and I'm like, the opiates are the problem. I'm just not going to do the opiates. I'm going to drink, and I'm going to, back then they had the little fake weed they're selling in the gas stations and stuff, that K2 spice stuff. And so I'm smoking it, drinking all the time, and I'm selling weed because that's what I always did. Some of my friends, that's what they still do. And I was making crazy money, crazy, stupid money. And then I started doing pills again. And from there, I had a bunch of money saved up. I had a bunch of grow houses, a bunch of stuff. And once I started doing pills, I eventually lost all. I didn't lose it. I gave it away. I gave away all that stuff to put in my arm. I was doing a bunch of pills, a bunch of heroin. And then I guess that was March of 2015. I went back to rehab I couldn't tell you how many times I've been to rehab. It's double digits. That time, and I always felt like they were hiding something from me in like the rooms of recovery, like y'all got like a secret handshake or some bullshit that y'all do that like no one's telling me, and that's why I can't ever get clean or be happy. And so I went to the Frontier Health, Magnolia Ridge over here in Johnson City in March of 2015, and some dudes came in from the local 12-step fellowships, and they told me the truth, or at least what I deem this. They told me the secret handshake, and the secret handshake was, if you want to get clean and you want to be happy, if you want any chance, because, I was a hot mess, and they were like, for junkies like you, and I know that's not person first language, but like, that's how they talk to me. That's how I talk to my people. Like, for junkies like you, like, your only chance is you better get off your ass and you better help as many people as you possibly can if you want to have a chance. So I got out of rehab, and I started going back to the rehabs and like bringing in meetings. I'd go to Woodridge, I'd go to Magnolia Ridge, I'd go to the kids group homes, I'd go to the jails, anywhere that would let me in to be like, hey man, like, you can get out and you can have a good life. Like, here's my number, call me, I'll help. And so that was what I did for the first, 3 years I was in recovery. I was sponsoring 15 dudes in a 12-step program. I was at meetings all the time, and I fell in love with recovery. I fell in love with seeing somebody coming in looking like death eating a cracker, and then seeing them be able to get a job. Then you see them be able to get in their kids' life again, buy houses, get custody of their kids, start their own businesses. And so it's like all of the people that everybody else was like, y'all don't stand a damn chance, we've all given up on you. People like what I was when I got clean. I get to play a small part in watching them do something that they had thought it was way past.
So that mindset shift was the whole difference for you. It was like
It's helping people.
So it went from I'm here and I don't want to be here to I don't want to be here, but I want to be here for other people, and that kind of helped keep you in. Is it?
I think it was. I think it's more like, this is just one man's opinion, but like drug addicts, we're selfish. Like we are the most selfish people on the planet, and we will steamroll you, we'll steal from you, we'll lie to you, and then we'll make you feel like it's your fault. Like we can be terrible humans, and the emphasis for me was always me. Like, what can I get out of this situation? How do I get clean? How do I get this? How do I get that? I remember I told my first AA sponsor since he was like, I want you doing aftercare every Thursday night at the local rehab. And I went in there and I was like, this is old alcoholic dude, and he's boring and he just sucked. And so I left there and I was like, dude, I don't want to go. I don't want to do this on Thursdays. And he said, your whole damn life's been about what you want. Why don't you do something for somebody else for a change? And it was like, so it was conditioning myself that I'm just a speck of dirt on this planet, and that God has a role assigned to each and every one of us. And if I want to have any type of decent life, I better quit thinking about me all the time and try to develop a servant's heart.
Right. Because then you're in people's lives, and so you have people around you, and you're not just focused. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. I do want to go back and ask you one question about one thing. Yeah. You kind of said it quickly, and I want you to kind of tell me a little bit more about it, because you said the Suboxone clinics, and I wasn't using any of the stuff they were prescribing me, right, or whatever, something like that. Yeah. Just because because I'm still trying to understand, because I don't understand what your experience was like. Kind of fill in some blanks there. Like when you say something like I wasn't using any of the things they were giving me, right, or what that looked like. Tell me a little bit about that.
I can give you the history of MAT clinics in this region.
I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so let's see, what year was that? That was 2003.
Okay,
I was living in Knoxville shooting black tar heroin, and it went terrible. There's no such thing as like a moderate heroin user. So like I ruined my life with it, and I came back home. I think the first time I ever did Suboxone or Subutex, and it was both of them, I was living in Knoxville and I was hooked on heroin, and this little rich kid that we would sell heroin to was prescribed it. And so we would take it to keep us from being dope sick if we couldn't find Oxy 80s or heroin. And so then I came back here, and there was one doctor that was prescribing it in all of the Tri-Cities, and that's Bomar Heroin, and this was like 2003. It's right under the little underpass here in Johnson City. And so me and like my childhood friends were back then there was like, I don't know, probably 10 to 15 people in the Tri-Cities prescribed to it. And so my poor mama, who's a school teacher, like my mom's not rich, she's a school teacher, but she loves her baby boys. So she was paying thousands of dollars for me to get this medicine. And they were like, you'd have to go to their stupid groups, and then they would give you the Suboxone. And then, as any good drug addict does, I'm like, but I've also been taking Xanaxes. So then they would prescribe you Klonopins. So that was the first time I ever legally got buprenorphine and all of that stuff. So I did that, and they were like, you're in recovery now. And whether they told me or didn't tell me, in my mind, if I was not shooting opiates, I was in recovery.
So they were telling you you were in recovery.
They were telling me I was in recovery, but here's the thing: is like I would take those pills, and they were back then they would give you 24 milligrams a day. And listen, I've got a serious habit. Like I'm shooting black tar heroin, and you don't need to. Like I got a habit that could kill a horse. I didn't need 24 milligrams of Suboxone.
Because it was just so much more powerful, or just because it was just that dosage was so high, or
the dosage was super high, and I'll just say it. I think they do that, and they still do that. The states regulated it down to 16 milligrams as maximum dosage now, but there's points in my life where I was doing 1,200 milligrams of oxycodone a day. So like serious drug habit, and 8 milligrams of Suboxone is sufficient, totally sufficient. And I have no way of proving this, but if you ask anybody that's ever went to one of these clinics, they will all tell you the same thing, that I believe they do that because they know that you're able to take those 2 extras a day or however many extra a day and sell those so that you can come back and pay the $100 for your next doctor's visit. Now, you have no way of proving that, but
so is that how you were treating it? You were using what you needed and then selling the rest? Or?
Yeah, and I would also we were going, because if I wasn't shooting opiates, like in my mind I was clean, so like we'd go smoke crack, we'd go whatever we wanted.
You weren't doing that one thing, and that meant you were good, but you were using that. And
so I'm going to the dumbass AA meeting, and I'm picking up 90-day chips, like leaving. Back then, Riverview, like you could it was in Kingsford, so like housing projects in Kingsford, you could pull up and like there'd be dudes like serving crack on the side of the street. And so like we would smoke crack, go to the meeting, I'd pick up a 90-day chip, and I'm like, I'm in recovery and I'm clean. And then as the years went on, like we would call them like heroin coupons, because if you got a script of Suboxone, and it was never just Suboxone. Like they would prescribe you Suboxone, and then they'd prescribe you Klonopins, and then they'll prescribe you they would have you do like a little 1-page thing that like any idiot could be like, and it's for ADHD. It's like, do you have trouble concentrating? Yes. Is it hard to stay on task? Yes. And so you answer these 10 questions on this stupid piece of paper, and then they're like, we're going to diagnose you with adult ADHD, and then we're going to prescribe you Ritalin. So like I'm leaving out of there, and it's like, I got 24 milligrams of Suboxone a day, 6 milligrams of Klonopin a day, 60 milligrams of Ritalin a day. Back in the early days, they'd prescribe you like Ambien, and then they'd be like, you're in recovery. And it's like, bro, I don't feel like I'm in recovery. Like, if this is what recovery feels like. And so they'll overprescribe. And this isn't just my experience, man. I know thousands. Like, so I don't feel like I'm speaking out of turn on any of this. And, I've got friends in the MAT world, and like, we're cool. And like, they know how I feel about it. I know how they feel about it. Like, we can agree to disagree, but this is my experience. And as a person that works with a ton of people in recovery, and the person that was in the dope game for forever, like these are unspoken truths that no one ever wants to acknowledge. So they would overprescribe it, and then like just makes you a zombie. Like, don't get too high, don't get too low. And all it does is keep you from getting like going through withdrawals for opiates. And I'm of the belief that addiction is like, it's a spiritual matter. Like there's something spiritually wrong with me. I'm empty. I'm bankrupt in here. So a pill's not going to fix that. And so I remember, God, it was the last year I was getting high, and I really just got the prescription so I could pass the test for the parole office, and I could be positive for buprenorphine, benzos, Ritalin, and so the parole office would leave me alone. But I would go in there, and like I wouldn't even have any Suboxone in my system, like, because I'm not taking it. And they would continue to write me the script, and they would continue to write me the script, and they would continue. And then once one doctor in the same office felt bad enough, like, he's not getting it, he sucks, whatever, they would they would send me to a doctor like the next door down in the same hall, like same practice. Shout out High Point Clinic, Dr. Shaw. And like, this is an addiction. Like, and see, here's the thing is like these days, they're the experts.
Right.
Like,
so was this a cash clinic?
Yeah.
I'll let you finish your thought, and then I'm going to ask you a follow up on that.
I know. And so now, like, you look at like the experts in addiction in the state, like Dr. Lloyd was my doctor. And like, he's bigwig at the state, like, you probably shouldn't say anything terrible about Dr. Lloyd. Like, and he was a cool dude, like, but they're as bad as the drug deal. The drug dealers would at least front you, like you show up to the Suboxone clinic and you're like, I got $87 this week. Can I come in and see you? And they're like, no, you gotta have 100. Like, where like I could go to the local trap house and be like, hey man, I got $87. And they're like, all right, cool, Craig, come back with the 13 tomorrow. But it's the same principle. You're writing me a prescription, and then it's like, hey, for your help with your treatment, maybe you should go to some meetings. And it's like, it's a piece of paper, and like, I would have my drug dealer sign it. Like, he'd come over and be like, hey, will you sign this form? And so you turn it in the next week, and like, it's a hustle. It is a hustle. And then, I'm going to go here with it. They call it harm reduction. I mean, that's the term.
I know the term.
Yeah, okay.
I know the term.
All right, so they call it harm reduction. All right, so we're going to look at measurables.
Okay.
To see if the harm has been reduced in the last, 15 years of them.
Right.
Have the overdose deaths gone down? No, they haven't. Has the overdoses themselves gone down? No. Are our jails less populated? No, overcrowded, right? Do we feel more safe as a community? Do you feel like there's less crime?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
Do you visibly see more people that appear to be inebriated on narcotics? Yeah. Like,
what do your eyes tell you versus
my eyes tell me that we have, and like I am a student of the drug game. Even today, I've been clean almost a decade. Like, I know, like, I that stuff interests me. I love it. And there's cycles to this stuff. So like, we used to go to the pill mills down in Florida, and you have the doctor, and he's writing you 240 Roxys and this and that and everything else. And so they shut that down, and they'd have the stupid billboards up when you're driving down there. It's like, go home, pillbillies, and talking to the Tennessee folk, and Tennessee, Kentucky, because it's not just Tennessee, like all our region was doing that. And so they shut those down. So pre the pill mills, like the Florida pill mills, there was the overprescribing of the oxys in our region. So that happened. Then it moved to that. And then the Suboxone clinics like blew up, they're booming. And from there, like, now you're not like, you go out here and you try to find a Roxy 30 on the street. Good luck. If you find one, it's probably a pressed pill with fentanyl. And so the heroin moved in, and then the heroin switched to fentanyl. But what really happened is the meth moved in. And so you can take the Suboxone, which does nothing to keep you from doing meth, because it's a spiritual problem. I spiritually don't feel like I'm okay. So the Suboxone will keep me from going through withdrawals. I can take my benzos, but then I still don't feel right inside, so I'm going to reach out for the meth. And 20 years ago, if you were to buy a gram of meth in the Tri-Cities, $100 to $120, it's shitty. It's made in a trailer park, trucker speed. It's terrible. Today, what is today, August 2nd?
It's August 2nd.
August 2nd, 2024. You walk out the door of this studio and throw a rock anywhere, any direction, you're going to hit a $30 gram of methamphetamine that's been made in a lab that's good. And so, like, did we reduce the harm or did we transfer it?
And make ourselves feel a little bit better because it seems...
And I don't even know.
I don't know.
Those people, like, they don't even care about feeling better. Some of them.
Right.
Don't. Some of them don't care about feeling better. What they did was they opened the money faucet, and it's like $100.
It sounds a whole lot like that same system that people were going down to Florida for.
It does.
It sounds very familiar.
Yeah. And so, and are there people that do it right? Absolutely.
Well, because I was going to say, obviously that was a cash clinic that you were going to, and now we have a lot of clinics that take insurance and have a lot of
that are.
Does that seem better, or is it the same thing from what you know of what you've experienced from people you've talked with?
They take the TennCare.
Right.
It's like I know these people. Like, I'm friends with some of them. And like, we've had these conversations. They bill TennCare and get, and where they would have charged me $100 cash, they're billing the state $150. Now they got to wait on the money a little bit. So like, you got to be a little more invested in it, but like, it's more profitable for them. But if you ever talk to somebody that runs an MAT clinic, ask them how many of your people are coming in here on methamphetamine, and then say, what are you doing? Like, what's protocol? What's protocol when they test positive for methamphetamine? Protocol is you give them the script and say, don't do meth, kids. Like there's no like, we don't, because, and here, I'll go a step further than that. It's because they don't have a medicine that they can charge for to treat methamphetamine.
Yeah. So, because and
yeah,
I've had these conversations.
Y'all are going to get me like. I'm
not trying to get you
it's cool.
taken out. I'm not trying to get you
cool.
taken out. Man.
They'll come at me with pitchforks, but it's cool because I like.
And the reason I asked the question is not because not because like we're on some crusade to take out an MAT clinic or that whole model. Because I'm asking questions a lot of times about like what you were talking about with harm reduction. And if you want, you call it public health model. Like we're trying to keep people alive. And one of the things that we tend to talk about from our organization side is it's one thing to keep people alive. It's another thing to help people live. And there's such a big difference between those two. Sure, maybe you're not going through these withdrawal symptoms. Maybe you're less likely to overdose. Maybe. Now, we talked about the stats. No, maybe or maybe not. And that's kind of that harm reduction side. And so I don't want to necessarily fault somebody that thinks they're trying to help keep somebody alive. But I think that from our perspective, it seems that's almost like step one. But you're not really helping somebody live until you actually help them build a new life outside of that maybe eventually moves them away from that at some point.
I love that you said that because I remember and like if I'm gonna knock them over the head, I need to give praise where praise is due too. So I remember going to see. I went to the High Point. At this point, I was still going to High Point, and they pulled me in there and they were like, Craig is a chronic opiate addict. The way that you are, the best that we can hope for is a level of maintenance to keep you on this medicine, and possibly you can lead some semblance of a normal life. Now, I want to be clear on this. At this time, I'm getting prescribed the Suboxone, and I'm only taking it when I can't conjure up the money or I can't find something. And I'm probably at the lowest point of my life. And they were like, this is as good as it's going to get for you. And I'm like, dude, if this is as good as it's going to get, like, blow my effing brains out now. Like, cause this is not existence. This sucks so bad. And, so they eventually kicked me out for something. And then I went over to, I can't even remember the name of it, the one that got raided by the feds. So I went to that one, and I was failing the drug test every week, and kudos to them. They pulled me in there, and they tried to do an intervention. They had all their staff come in there, and they were like, we look at the levels of the drug test that you're taking, and we worry that you're not going to make it back next week. And as a good addict, I say, are you giving me my script or not? And they said no. And I said, well, I want my $100 back. And they gave me the number for crisis, and I ended up getting clean like 5 days after that. So there's some places that want to do it right, but I got in trouble for saying this, and at our very first fundraiser that we ever did for Recovery Resources, and I stand by this statement. I said the state, for somebody like myself, sets the bar of success at not death. The state doesn't realize or doesn't care, and one could argue that some of those MAT clinics don't care that I'm a real ass human. I've got dreams, I've got hopes, I've got aspirations, I've got kids, I've got a mama that loves me, I got a brother that loves me. Like, dude, not death is not, like, that's not success. Like, and so like when we started our organization, it was very much like, the bars is never going to be just to not get high. Like if that's what you want to do, go somewhere else. We're about kicking ass and taking names. Like, what do you want to do with life? What are your passions? What are the things that you've given up on? What are the things that you've always been too fearful of to even attempt to try? And then like, let's go explore those things. And we've created a culture with the drug addicts and the community around us where we're viewed as a pity case. The last thing that I need or any of my dudes need is anyone's pity. I need an opportunity. And then if I blunder that opportunity, that's on me. But I it's the old adage, you baby the addict, you bury the addict. And we're doing a whole lot of babying the addict when we really need to be like, hey man, like, you've got so much more than not death. We should have so much more to offer you than a stupid ass box of Narcan, some fentanyl test strips, and then 16 milligrams of Suboxone that day. Like, shame on us that we think that's okay. Like, that's not okay. People can say what they want, but like, they're doing this to like my friends and my loved ones. Like, it's not their people. They're over here living on the tree streets, drinking wine all the time. Like, it's not true. Like, so we're doing this music festival right now, and I've got to do single invites for like, it won't let me do the invite 500 or invite 1,000. So I've got to go through one by one by one. And we're well into the hundreds of my Facebook friends who are dead. So it's not their people who are dying. It's my people. And so, like, sorry if I don't think that y'all are getting millions of dollars of, from funding sources through the federal government and the state government. And the best you got's a damn box of Narcan and some fentanyl strips, and sending them to an MAT clinic that prescribes them a Schedule 3, several Schedule 3 narcotics. Like, call them medicine all you want. It's a Schedule 3 narcotic.
Obviously, this conversation was just too exciting to fit into one episode, so we're going to break it here, and we are going to come back on the next episode of Intrinsically Motivated to hear the rest of what Craig has to say. Intrinsically Motivated is an Uplift Appalachia podcast. Uplift Appalachia seeks to replace addiction and mental health challenges with flourishing, and we believe that an intrinsically motivated church is the answer. To learn more, visit upliftappalachia.org.